Hi folks, this is Kramer from IT Visualizer channel. Today we'll continue our lab, the COVID-19 lab. This is the video number 8. We have been discussing in the previous video the following. We have been discussing that we have created different group policies and we need to apply them to different users and groups. We have been discussing what is a group policy. A group policy, it is a centralized, or the group policy management, it is a centralized tool that we use to control the environment of the user or the computer through issuing group policies. So for example, if you need to force a certain background on all of the users in your domain, you should configure a group policy, and this should be applied to all of the users, and it will force a certain background or screensaver or lock screen, whatever you like. So we have been discussing how we can apply different group policies. As I said before, one of them is to force a certain background, and we have already some group policies exported from a previous lab, and we will import them in this lab. So they are already configured, and we will import them to our scenario or our lab that we are working in through importing them from, or we will import them from the group policy management console. Okay, and we have been also discussing what is the conditions, okay, we need to take into consideration when configuring and applying group policies. You should have two conditions for a successful implementation of a group policy. First, you need to attach or to link the group policy to a certain organizational unit. So you need to tell, or you need to tell the group policy management which group policy will be applied to which organizational unit. For example, if you have an organizational unit that contains all of the IT, for example, and you need to apply a certain group policy to them, so you need to link this group policy to the organizational unit that contains the IT. This is first. So you need to link the group policy to an organizational unit, and you need to specify which object it will be applied in this, or which object it will be applied in this organizational unit. So for example, you need to apply this group policy to users in the organizational unit X, for example. We can have, or the same organizational unit can contain, for example, a computer object. So you need to define the group policy will be applied to which organizational unit and to which object in this organizational unit. So the organizational unit can contain users, computers, groups, so and so. So we have discussed this also, and there is a problem that happened in the previous video concerning applying a certain group policy to the IT. So the problem was that I am the domain admin, so I am as an IT in the highest level, so I don't have any group policies applied to me, and suddenly I saw that some things are blocked on me. For example, I can't see my C drive, I can't open the run command, I can't change anything. So this was a problem, and the problem was, or the issue of this problem, because I was a member of another group that was limited. So I am as an IT a member of the domain admin, which is the highest group in the domain, and I was also a member of another group which have less rights than the domain admins. So in case you are a user and you have two groups, one have high rights and the other have low rights, the low rights will be applied to you. It will override the highest rights. So this is to take into consideration when you are a member of two groups. The least group or the restrictive rights will be applied to you, not the highest groups, or not the allowed or the most highest group. For example, if you have everything open to you and you have another one, everything is closed on you, it will apply the closed one. Okay, and then we have tested the group policies, okay, as I said before, to apply a certain background and the lock screen and the screensaver. So all of this we have discussed in the previous video, and then we have taken a snapshot of the virtual machine after applying all of the group policies successfully, and fixed the problem, by the way, of some group policies applied to me. As I said before, I have a group policy that has blocked everything on me, so because I was a member of two groups, so I removed myself from the group that have least amount of rights, and after removing myself from the second group, and I was only a member of the domain admin, everything returned back to normal. Anyway, so we have discussed all of this in the previous video. In this video we'll begin creating, or we will have a scenario. I need all you to show it. So here, this is my laptop, okay, and this is the IP address, and this is the name of the laptop, and this is the hypervisor or the program that we are using to create virtual machines. It's Workstation Pro 16. So this is the program, and then we have a circle. This circle we will consider it at the VM virtual environment, or this is our virtual environment, and this triangle we will consider it our domain, which is not marble.local, it is patient0.internal. so this this triangle is our domain, and we have two servers, okay. These are virtual servers. The first one is BRCRRIHEM, this our primary domain controller, and DNS and Wins. So this is the first one, and its IP address is 192.168.1.10, and the primary DNS is 192.168.1.10. so it is a domain controller, and it is in the same time the DNS, and the secondary DNS will be 192.168.1.11. we will create another domain controller which will be a secondary DNS, so it will be put here. And actually also the Wins server, it is also 192.168.1.10. we have Wins server, primary Wins server, it's 192.168.1.10, and secondary Wins server, which will be 192.168.1.11. so the second virtual machine will be a domain controller, a DNS, a Wins server, okay. So this is the IP setting, and these are two virtual machines. Here in this lab we will create the second virtual machine, which is BRCRLFHEM. this is the second virtual machine. It will be an additional domain controller, a DNS, and an additional, so this will be an additional domain controller, additional DNS, additional Wins server, and it will be a file server and a WSOS server and a DHCP server, okay. This is it, and these are the IP address. It will be 192.168.1.11, and the primary DNS will be the first domain controller, which is 192.168.1.10. it's a domain controller and DNS in the same time, and the secondary DNS will be the IP of the server itself, okay. So these are the IP setting, and this is the virtual network. So they are in a virtual network of a subnet 192.168.1.10. this is the subnet, okay. And here we can see that this is the gateway, or this is the gateway that all of these virtual machines will get out to the internet through this gateway, which appears to be my laptop IP address. So my laptop will be acting as a router, okay, or it will be the one that would get them out to the internet, okay. And our virtual network name, it is VMnet8. we all remember that when you work with the VM Workstation Pro, you need to create the virtual network name and IP. so the virtual network name will be VMnet8, okay. So all of these are the structure of the domain and the environment that you are working on. And a best practice, I need to show you all a little bit of some recommendation when you are working in a production environment. You need to have some considerations to be in your mind. So here, let me give you a little bit of an animation here. So let's preview. Sorry guys, sorry, I needed to get the slideshow. So here we will current slide. So here we have our first domain controller, okay. So our first domain controller will act as, or sorry guys, let me show you all here a little bit. So okay, we cannot or I can give you all of the, so it's best practice, okay, when you have a domain controller, or you are intending to install a domain controller or additional domain controller, not to have the file server and the DHCP and the WSOS on the same server. So you cannot install a server to be a domain controller and put additional roles with it. It is preferable only to have the additional, or to have the domain controller only to be as it is, only to install Active Directory on it and to be only a domain controller. If you need to have install the file server role, the WSOS role and the HSP role, install every one of these roles on a separate server. Okay, so this is the best practice. So what if you don't have a separate server for every one of them? You can collect the file server and the WSOS on a server and the DHCP on a separate server. So the best practice is to leave the domain controller alone without any additional roles installed on it, and to install the file server and the DHCP on one server and the WSOS on another server. Okay, so it's not best practice to have a lot of roles installed on the same server, especially if this server will be a domain controller. Okay, so this is the configuration. So let's begin and see how we can make another virtual machine, and we will make it a domain controller and a file server and the WSOS and DHCP. And actually, due to my limited hardware, I will only install all of these roles on one server. Again, I say that it is best practice, if you have an additional domain controller, to leave the server only to have additional, or to have the domain controller only installed on it, or this role to be only installed on it. And if you need to install additional roles, put it on a separate server, especially if these roles are a file server and the WSOS. Okay, it's also best practice not to put the file server and the HSP on one server. Okay, so it's not a recommendation. Okay, but if you don't have enough servers, you can install both of them. Okay, so the best practice to install file server on a separate server, WSOS on a separate server, DHCP on a separate server. If you don't have, you can install DHCP and file server on one server and the WSOS on another server. Okay, so let's begin and see how we can install this role. So here we will begin. Here I open my Excel sheet. This Excel sheet contains all of the computers in the domain and servers. So from it I will get the name of my additional domain controller. So my additional domain controller name will be BRCERLFHEM. Okay, so this is the second or additional domain controller. We will take the name from here, and then we'll begin creating a new virtual machine. So this is the VM Workstation Pro, our hypervisor, and then we will have another or a new virtual machine. You can go, let's set one thing here. You can go, first of all, I need to go and create. So here, this is the place where the virtual machines are stored. So when I tell him to create a virtual machine in the VM Workstation Pro program, he saves the virtual machine to a certain destination. So here, what I'm doing here, I'm going to this destination. It's the Kareem Documents virtual machine. This is my first virtual machine. I will make a folder for my second virtual machine and tell the VM Workstation Pro to save the virtual machine to this folder. Okay, so here we will do another folder. Okay, and then we will go, but let me go another. So let's go back here for something else. Let me show you how we can do this. First, we will tell him a new virtual machine. Okay, here you go. And then we will tell him to install operating system. That will be Windows Server 2016. As I said before, there is no option to install Windows Server 2022, but it will go, or it will work if you choose Windows Server 2016. And this also works for not only Windows Server Windows Server 2022, but it works for Windows Server 2019. So if you need to install Windows Server 2019 or Windows Server 2022 on the VM Workstation Pro, you can choose the option to install operating system Windows Server 2016. It will work because it doesn't have, or there is no in the list a choice to see Windows Server 2019 or Windows Server 2022. So here we will go and create the folder as I said before. And then we'll tell him the destination. Here we can see it, and then we will give it a hard disk of 70 gigabyte. Okay, and then customize the hardware. Then we will give it, here we have two processors. I need only to give it one processor because I don't have a lot of sorry guys, just 1 minute. I will give it one processor because I have only my physical processor can be or I have only my processor can only host or can only create, or I have my host have only one processor which is divided to 4 logical processors, so I can use 3 of these logical processors to create 3 virtual machines and leave the last virtual processor for my host. Okay, so here I have my first virtual machine to have one processor, and this will have a second processor, one processor only, and we'll give it 2 gigabyte of RAM, and actually I will give it 3 gigabyte of RAM because I need it because I create a lot of server roles on it, so it needs to have a lot of RAM. And then we will put it on our network VMnet 8. Okay, and we will have 2 network cards installed on it because we will make teaming between them, the same as we have done in the first server or first virtual machine. So now we have 2 networks, and then we will put or will mount the Windows Server 2022 ISO image. So here is the ISO image. Okay, close and then finish, and then we will begin installation of the operating system. So we will power on the virtual machine and begin installing the operating system. So here you go, it will begin installation. It will boot from the DVD. Press enter. So here we will tell him next, and then we will choose or install, we will choose the Windows Server 2022 data center operating system experience, or desktop experience included, because if we not choose desktop experience, it will install the operating system, but it will not be with a GUI, is with a graphical interface. It will be with a command prompt. Okay, the same as Linux. Okay, or the same as having a Linux operating system, but it doesn't have any GUI or graphical interface. So here I have a serial for the Windows Server 2022. You can install it as a trial or evaluation period. Okay, and then we'll put the serial one for the Windows Server data center. Actually I cannot paste from directly from the host to the guest, because still the Vmware Tools is not installed, and this helps me to directly copy and paste from my host to my guest, from my host to my guest, but still the VM workstation VM tools are not installed, so I can paste from edit and then paste, okay? But when you install the VMware tools on the virtual machine, you can do this directly, like copy and paste from to, okay? And then we have data center experience. It will install this with a graphical interface, full Windows graphical interface. The other one is without a graphical interface, only command prompt, and then next. Then you customize, then we'll make a new partition. It's always recommended to have more than 150 gigabyte as a partition to install the operating system on it. This is for the Windows 10. As for server, you should have more than this. Then we have partition it to partition C, which is 60 gigabyte, and the other will be D partition, it will be 11, and we will format the D partition as NTFS. Then we install our operating system on the C drive. Then we will wait until the installation is finished. We will wait for a moment. Here 47%. Then 87%, and then we are ready to go. And then he will ask for the administrator password or the local administrator password. We should provide the password for him. And by the way, the default domain policy, I have configured it to change every local administrator account on every machine and server, okay? Change it from administrator to K-Raouf 1. So every local administrator which is named administrator on every server and workstation will be changed from administrator to K-Raouf, okay? So this is the best practice, I said before, to give this user a strong password and change it from administrator to any other thing, and at the end you can disable it, okay, and use any other account, or to use an account that have the same privileges as the administrator. Okay, now we have this virtual machine working. Now we need to click on Control Alt Delete. This is the icon. This click resembles Control Alt Delete. Click. This is the administrator account. Then enter. Then we need to do a couple of things. We need to change the name of the server and give it an IP address or a static IP address, and make network teaming between the two network cards, and open the remote desktop option so we can be able to remotely access this server from outside. And a lot of, or exactly the same that we have done with the previous virtual machine or our previous domain controller. So here also we will have some, first of all we need also to remember to install the VMware tools, okay, so we can be able to fully control this virtual machine and to be integrated or with my host, so, or I can have or I can move and copy things from my virtual machine to my host, okay, easily. So we need to install VMware tools to make this possible, and to fix the drivers for the virtual machine and a lot of things. So remember always, if you are creating a VM Workstation Pro virtual machine, to install the VMware tools directly after installing the operating system on the virtual machine. So here the server manager will be opened. Then we need to go to the local server and change the name of the server and do a couple of things. Here we can go a little bit further. Okay, so here we have the local server, and then if we need to change the name. So here we click on the name of the machine and then tell him to change. Okay, so we need to change it to this name. Okay, we'll change it to this name. Still we didn't have the VMware Tools installed, so we're not able to copy paste directly from the host to the guest. Here is the name of the machine changed. It tells us to restart the server if we need the name to take effect, but we will restart later. And then what we do, we need to open also the remote desktop option and the Nic Teaming. So here now we will open the remote desktop option. We will enable it so we can be able to access the server from outside or from a remote computer. Here, so we allow remote connections to this computer and only allow connections from remote desktop application with network level authentication. So not any user will be able to remotely access this server. It should be a member of a certain group. Okay, and here we're telling him to do not start the server manager automatically because it takes from the RAM. So, and we pinned the server manager to our taskbar. Here we need to install the Vmware Tools. We will tell him set up 64-bit. And then after installing the VMware Tools, also we need a restart, so we will restart after installing the VMware Tools. As we can see, also it will change the environment. It will install certain drivers to correct the display issue. It's not a full screen, and it will install a lot of things. Actually, this is recommended, as I said before, so you can work smoothly between your host and your guest, or between your laptop and your virtual machine. So one of the things is to install a display driver. Okay, so you can see that the screen is flickering, and this means that the display driver is installed, and as you see here the display is corrected. Okay, now here is the notification that our VMware Tools are installed. Okay, and we need to restart, so we need to make a restart. Okay, so also our new server name will take effect. So we will restart, and then we will begin configuring a couple of options on the server before promoting it to be an additional domain controller. And also before promoting the server, we need to install the Active Directory domain services tools first. Here we can just run it more quicker here. So here we'll go there. Okay, and we'll go further, and then we will log in. Anyway, you will log in the same password. Okay, and then we need to customize our desktop, so we need to have a couple of icons to appear on the desktop. One of them is this PC, so we'll tell him personalize. and then we need to go to themes, okay, and then add a couple of icons on the desktop. So we'll go to themes here, and then we'll add this PC icon and the control panel and a couple of icons, desktop icon setting. We'll add the computer and then control panel and users, files and network, all of these to be added to the desktop. And then we will open the server manager and begin configuring the network card teaming. As I said before, it's a very good, or it's a best practice to have two network cards and to make teaming between them for redundancy and for load balancing, okay. So for redundancy you have two network cards. If one of them fail, the other will work. And for load balancing, to have the data transferred from and to the network card to be distributed between two network cards, not only one network card. So this is also load balancing, okay. So here here we will open the remote desktop option. We will enable it. So we have enabled the remote desktop option before. Then we'll make the NIC teaming or network teaming. We will have the two network cards appearing. We will choose them or select them and tell them or tell it to make network teaming between them and give this network teaming a name, okay. And remember, you need to have an option chosen in this network teaming, something called address hash, okay. So load balancing mode, we need to change it to address hash, okay. This option is only in a virtual environment. If you are in a physical environment, address hash is not needed. You can leave it to dynamic, or you can leave it to the default setting, okay. But here, because I am in a virtual environment, it will only accept load balancing option address hash, okay. So this is one of the things, okay. If you make it Hyper-V, it will choose the correct setting for you. It will choose address hash, and for the first time you can see that it is faulty, but if you leave it for a couple of seconds, it will give you active, okay. So here we can see that one of them is active and the other one it's not active or faulty. Here we can see that I have my audio is not working. So here we will choose to troubleshoot this problem, okay. So we'll tell him open sound setting or sounds, and then tell him to troubleshoot this problem, and he will rectify this error because the audio service is not running. So here tell him troubleshoot, and he will detect the problem and he will fix it. So now our teaming is done. We need to open the teamed network cards, or the two teamed network cards, and put in their connection or their network connection properties the static IP address. So here this is our teamed network connection, okay. So we will open it and then we will choose to put static IP address, which will be 192.168.1.11. So here the audio error is fixed. He said that your audio service was not running, so he have started this audio service. Now we will put a static IP address. It will be 192.168.1.11, and then we will have the subnet mask 255.255.255, and then the gateway will be 192.168.1.2, okay. And then we will have our preferred DNS, which will be our first domain controller, which acts in the same time as a DNS server, okay. So this is our DNS. So now we are ready to go. Now we can open the server manager and add the Active Directory domain services role or features, and then after adding these features we can promote the server to be a domain controller. I think you will make a restart. Just a moment, guys, just a moment here. Sorry, because I was putting my charger in my laptop because the machine or the laptop battery was low. So here now I am going to I have shut down the machine to decrease the RAM, okay, a little bit, okay, and I will add here a shared folder between my host and my guest, or my laptop and my virtual machine, so I can transfer data between my laptop and my virtual machine. Here I am defining a folder on my laptop to be shared with my virtual machine, which is this one, and I will add three folders on my three folders on my laptop to be shared with my, or to be shared with this specific virtual machine. So this is a good option. You can get it from the edit virtual setting of the machine and in options and shared folders. Okay, so you have here, we have two folders or we have three folders will be shared, okay, for with my virtual machine from my laptop. Okay, so I can copy the scripts and the sources of the programs I need to install. So here now we have three folders shared with my virtual machine, and now we need to open the first domain controller, so my second or my additional domain controller can join the domain. Okay, so now we have our first domain controller powered on, and then we will power on the second virtual machine and join it to the domain, or promote it to be a second domain controller or to be an additional domain controller. So I think we can pass it real quickly. Can pass it here real quickly. Okay, so now I have already the first domain controller up and running. So if we can go a little bit further here again, so it is up and running, or we'll prepare it to be up and running, and then we'll go and open. We go and open. So here it is up and running. We will go and open the second virtual machine, and then we will add the Active Directory domain services. And so here we can go and access the virtual machine. So basically we are preparing our environment to have an additional domain controller, and we said before it will not be an additional domain controller only, it will be a DHCP server, it will be a WSOS server, it will be a file server. So now we will open the server manager, and then we will begin adding the Active Directory domain services and then, or features, and then promote the server to be a domain controller. So it's still collecting data. We need to wait for a moment. So here we can see that there is a service that is not running. It is the Microsoft Edge to start. Anyway, it will start automatically if it is needed. They will add roles and features. We will make it full screen, so we need to have our virtual machine view to be full screen. This is the icon. And then we need to tell him next, okay, and next, and then this is the IP address. Then we will add Active Directory domain services. And I intend this also to be a Windows server or additional or a secondary Windows server. So we will add the Windows server feature as well, or the tools, okay, and then next. Okay, here I uncheck it, but I will do it later anyway. So next, and then install. So here it is beginning the installation of the Active Directory domain services. It will take a little bit of time, but we can run it quickly here. So can pause it also real quickly. So again, anyway, so now it is installed. Then we need to promote this server to be a domain controller, and then we will choose add a domain controller to an existing domain. Before that, or the first domain controller, we have choose add a new forest, because there was no domain controllers and he is the first domain controller in a new forest. But here the forest, it is already there, and we have also we have a domain controller or primary domain controller. So this option will be the suitable one to add an additional domain controller to an existing domain. So we need to tell him the domain, okay, and the user that have the privileges to promote this server to be an additional domain controller. This should be the highest user that have the highest privileges, which is the domain admin. So here we will put the name of the domain, then my domain admin account, and then we will have, or we put the password, okay, and then tell him okay. So here he will retrieve the domains in the forest. He will try to see if there is a domain already. He will see that there is patient 0.internal, so we will choose it and tell him next, and then we will have a certain error. I need to show you all this error. It's called bad DNS packet. Okay, this error I have searched a lot to fix it. I have changed a lot of things. I have done a lot of changes. Okay, the fix for this problem is to change entirely the system of the server from Windows Server 2022 to Windows Server 2019. Okay, I have changed a lot of things. Actually, this was the only solution. In another lab, the guy that was installing the lab, he has two virtual machines. The two was having Windows Server 22 installed on it, and the first was primary and a primary domain controller, and the second was a secondary domain controller. So it worked that you can work with a primary domain controller and a secondary domain controller, and the two have Windows Server 2022 installed on them. But here in my lab, in this scenario, it didn't succeed. For a certain reason, I have changed even the Windows Server 2022 ISO. I have another ISO with the same operating system, but this was not the issue. I have changed a couple of things. Also, this was not the issue. At the end, it was fixed by making my additional domain controller operating system to be Windows Server 2019. Anyway, it's very close to 2022, but there is a lot of changes, of course. But this was the fix of the error. Okay, I've tried to search it, so please guys, if you are going to implement my lab, please see if this error will be replicated, or this error will appear for you, and give me a fix if you have another fix other than the one that I have mentioned now. So I will go directly to the other video that I have installed the Windows Server 2019 on this virtual machine, so I will close it. Anyway, I just need to see if we have 45 minutes. Okay, so we will have a couple of minutes left. Okay, so here we will go and open the second video, and then I will go directly and install it. Let's 2022, let's go here, and we'll go now to 2021. So here, this is again guys, so here this is the, again let's go here, so this is the server after installing. Let me go here, let's go also again. So here this is the Windows Server 2019, and then I am installing the I am installing the Active Directory domain services. Okay, so it's 28, just a moment here, so it is 28, here it is, and then we go and install it. So here I will install, okay, this is the second server, it's have Windows Server 2019 installed on it. So now we will begin installing the Active Directory domain services. Next next, install, and then after a moment you can see that we need to promote the server to be a domain controller. So here will take a little bit of time. So now when we promote the server to be a domain controller, we will not see the error that I have discussed before. So here we tell him an additional domain controller, and then tell him select the domain. So here he will ask for a username and the password in the domain. Okay, it will be able, or the user that will be able to promote this server to be an additional domain controller, I will use the domain admin account. And here we can see that we will not find an error, or the error that appeared before with the Windows Server 2022, it didn't appear. Okay, so here, okay, patient 0, okay, and then next, and then here there is no error appeared. So now he is asking me this server will be an additional domain controller, and the DNS server, and the global catalog server, and the password for the directory service restore mode. So everything is working perfectly. Next, and we have discussed before all of these options. So here he is asking me about the replication. So he will be an additional domain controller, and he will replicate from any domain controller in the domain. And now we will tell him next, and then we will begin promoting the server to be a domain controller. It will take a little bit of time. And then it will take some time, so we can pause it also a little bit here quickly. So here it will take some time. Okay, and then again here for a moment, it was successfully configured, and he will restart the server. So let's see now if we log in with my domain account, we will see the different group policies applied, okay, and different setting, okay, or the login script to be applied, and a lot of things also. So let's see. I think we can pause it also very quickly here. We can go there. Okay, so now just a moment. Now this is the we will see the welcome screen. So this is patient 0 city, and then I can log in with my username krauf, okay, and then the password. Then we will see that the different Active Directory group policies will be applied, the login script will be applied, so a lot of things will be applied. Just wait for a moment. Registry, so we can see a lot of policies applied here. Internet policy setting, auditing policy setting, so here we can see that the login script is applied, and the registry key notification, it will not appear. This is for the first time, but it will not appear again. So here we can see that a lot of things are appearing here concerning the registry keys and the login script. Okay, he cannot find the idle log of program. This is correct because it's not there, so this is a fresh installation, and the idle log of program, it is not in the location C idle log of, so I need to create a folder and put the idle log of program in it. So here we can see that the background is applied, and still we need another restart so the time zone can be changed, and the English and Arabic keyboard layout to be added. Here another info: if you need to go and access a partition on a remote, so let me go here again. If you need to go to a remote server and access a partition on this remote server, from here you can just type the name of the server, then C, and then the $sign. Okay, this is only accessible for the domain admins. So any domain admin, if you want to access any PC partition or remote PC partition, he just can type the name of the PC, then the partition, then $sign. Okay, so this is called hidden share, and it's only for the admins or the local admins or the domain admins. Okay, so this is it. I will go to my partition C on my first domain controller and copy the idle log of program because it's not here on my second domain controller. So I type it, or I will copy it and put it on my C partition. Okay, here you go, and paste. So the error will not appear, the one that we have been discussing now, and then we'll make I think another restart maybe, or I think I will go and copy here. Yes, I will go and to the partition D of the first domain controller and copy the folder scripts, okay, or copy a couple of things here. Anyway, so we will stop here until this minute, 36 minutes. So we will stop at this moment, and then we will continue our lab. So this is part 1. So this is part 1 of the lab. Okay, we will configure, or we will begin working with the second part of the lab, the upcoming video. Hope this video was informative for you all. Thank you all for viewing. Thank you so much. This is 36 minutes. Okay.